Hi, my name is Jason Sulliman. I wanted to talk today and demonstrate a little bit about embouchure and range, how I approach these subjects with my students and my own practicing. There are popular words that are thrown about brass pedagogy quite a bit. Sometimes they're overused, sometimes they're used in an inaccurate manner, and based on a lot of information I've learned in some other disciplines, as I've mentioned in previous videos, things like kinesiology or cognitive science, there are some things that we can kind of keep in mind when we develop ways to work on playing over the range of a brass instrument. In the world of kinesiology, it's commonly known that there are no two movements that are alike. It's kind of like snowflakes. There's no two snowflakes that are alike. If you look at them closely enough, they're all different. Same thing with movement. If we were to measure our embouchure or the muscular engagement, air pressure, any kind of those ratios, if we were to record the sound that we play and then zoom in on those sound wave files, we would find that even if we played the same note 50 times, we'd have 50 different versions. We do it differently every time because the movements are different every time. It's an important concept to remember. Embouchures are therefore always different as well. What we do to play the notes, it's not always the same every time. It changes, it's context dependent, which means what comes before it, what comes after it. Things like hydration level, fatigue are going to affect what the lips have to do to make the sound happen. And many of us use, in fact all of us use multiple embouchures. We don't even realize it, and they're all slightly different, maybe undetectable differences, but there's a lot of different constantly changing and evolving embouchure or embouchures going on when we play. If we believe this, and I do, then it's kind of pointless to work on setting an embouchure a certain way. It almost doesn't really matter. As long as the lips are vibrating and there's air or wind behind it to make the vibration happen, to make the song come through, everything will work out great. Well, for a lot of people that doesn't seem to be enough information. So here are some things that I think about and ways that I approach it to kind of help from there. I really only have two rules for embouchure, like Fight Club. Rule number one about embouchure is we don't talk about embouchure. With my students, they never hear the embouchure word. They don't hear the E word. It's kind of pointless. I think it's a waste of time. If you start talking about embouchure and you start directing people's focus or attention towards the embouchure, then they start focusing on what their face is doing. They're playing by feel, they're micromanaging, they're thinking about things that should be processed unconsciously, and they're not thinking about the music that they should be making. So I think it really just causes more harm than good to even talk about embouchure. I'm talking about it with you just so I could say, don't talk about it. Rule number two, instead of talking about embouchure, let's talk about goal-directed approach, goal-directed behavior. Okay, so what is it we're trying to do? What do we need our embouchures to do? Well, we need to be able to play a big range. I play the bass trombone. That means the orchestral repertoire, it's about 3.5 octaves. Maybe a little more than that if you take the extreme high and low, but it's about 3.5 octaves. Which means I need to sound amazing on 4 octaves. Which means I probably need to play about 4.5 to 5 octaves functionally in order to make it sound amazing on that specific 3.5 octave range. Number two, I need to move about those ranges easily. If there are large jumps, if there are disjunct lines, and it doesn't matter where they go, if they cross certain fault lines, if you will, where I have embouchure shifting that needs to take place, well, I've got to figure out a way to smooth that out. I've got to be able to play from low to high, high to low, whatever it takes. Most important rule, it all needs to sound easy. It just needs to be easy, breezy, beautiful. There can be no extraneous effort. There can be no wasted energy. Anything that detracts from the beautiful sounds that we're trying to make, that's just not helping us. So it's all got to sound easy. Most people come up with ways to work on their range, ways to work on embouchure, if you will, that don't cover all three of these things. They cover 2 of 3 or 1 of 3. 2 out of 3, it's not going to get the job done. It needs to be all 3 of these things. So go back and review them if you need them. For me, I approach range almost backwards. When I want to work on my high register, I start with a higher note, basically, and I develop the range by adding notes below it and working back up to it. When I work on my low range, I start with a low note, and I develop range by adding notes that are above it and working down to it. It's kind of the opposite way. For years, I would start in the mid-register, work my way up, and I would top out about F or G above the staff. It's a common place for trombonists or bass trombonists to start struggling with how things are working. That's a whole other video, but I approach it a little bit differently now, and I'm going to demonstrate in a little bit. I practice everything I do quickly and slowly, and that's different from what I said in a previous video. I made a video about fast practice technique. That video was specifically geared towards learning passages that require coordination of movement faster than what we can process, if you will. So learning fast passages. But this is basic technical stuff and embouchure and range and whatever. So here I want to also practice things slowly. When I practice it slowly, it means that the most extreme note that I'm working up to or down to is at the end of the breath. And that means I need to make sure that everything's nice and relaxed. If I'm squeezing or pinching or doing any bad habits, it won't come out. And that's true for the high notes and the low notes. When I practice fast here, then things have to be very smooth. I can't have extraneous movement. The embouchure needs to just kind of smooth out. It's shifting very easily. And I also get to work on my left hand and my right hand, slide technique, valve coordination, all that good stuff. So I do everything slow and fast. Everything is on a single breath. The second we take a breath, we shift. Every time that we take a breath, we have a chance to make some kind of micro movement or adjustment with our face or our mouthpiece placement or all that stuff. So if we really want to know what we have and what we don't have in terms of what we can play, you got to do it on one breath. That's how you really know. Let's say you're working with a register where once you get to D, that D, things kind of start changing. You can tell that it doesn't sound right. It's really uncomfortable, all that stuff. We don't want to play by feel, but it's really uncomfortable. And so you kind of consider it the beginning, the gateway to your upper register or extreme register. Well, let's come up with a broken pattern of, we'll do whole steps for now, so we'll do major seconds. And we're going to start at that D. So the first thing I want to do is I want to play that D a number of times and just get it to sound nice and smooth and even. Each time I play it, I'm saying to myself, can I make it sound like it's an easier thing to do? And as a byproduct, it will actually get easier, sound will open up. Okay, so let's say now I've got a D that's reasonably easy. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add whole steps below it in a broken manner. So I'll start at C, down to B flat, up to D. And now I'm going to keep adding. I would keep adding and adding and adding, always doing it in one breath. That's a kind of more of a faster version, if you will. So things have to be smooth. There's some coordination that needs to happen. In fact, my valves are clunky. I should oil them after this. So that's an example of major seconds. Okay, so now let's say I want to work up to D, and I'll do minor thirds. Yeah, it's getting tricky with the notes here. And I can keep adding and adding and adding. All the while, my D is getting much more easy to play, and I'm able to play it from anywhere in my range. Great. Well, let's try major thirds. Keep adding, keep adding, keep adding. Perfect fourths. I can keep adding, keep adding, keep adding. And then you can keep getting the intervals to be larger and larger. If you do tritones, it actually has octave leaps in it. And work that up to be a little faster. Okay, fine. Perfect fifths, Marcin. You go all the way up to the octaves if you want. If you can get to the point where you're doing. And smooth that out, well, then you're getting better control. Now, you can also go back and do all of that tongued. You know, because we don't want too much biting, too much chewing, all that stuff. And we're all trying to work it out to the best we can. Do that on all the intervals. Etc., etc., etc. So eventually what happens is after, about a week, D's not a problem. And then you start building it off of E flat. So you start keeping track of what you're doing and you alternate, and eventually you just start moving up your range. So here's an example of a sheet. When I started working on this stuff, I was working on G above the staff. And that's 3 ledger lines up in the bass clef. And so then I started adding and adding and adding and adding. I got to the point where I could pretty much come down from my low range all the way up, single breath. I'd have to do the tempos a little faster. This is tongued, so it's all tongued. But then, the minor thirds, the major thirds, the perfect fourths, all the way up until I was able to do the octave runs. Bop, 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 bop. And so by that point, I was then able to go to A flat. So then I started putting together the sheet for A flat. Obviously, I've put some time in here. And then I started doing A. This is the slurred version for A. So A is always the goal. And then I would just keep adding, working up to A, adding, working up to A, adding, working up to A. And then there's A, tongued. And then I got A. So then I was like, all right, let's do B flat. So I started working on B flat. Started working on B flat. And then I started going to B. And then I started going to B slurred. And then I started going to C. And then I started going to D flat. And then all of a sudden things started going so quickly, I'm not done with these sheets, and I just keep going up. And I started working on D. And now, even the other day, I'm like, oh, I need to start working on E flat. Here, I'll demonstrate a little bit of it. Okay, so I've never worked on high E flat before. I call it E flat 5. D5 is something I started working on only a couple of days ago, but I'm already at the point where I feel like I can do more. So let me go through the process of how I'm going to go after E flat 5. I'll start an octave below it, so I'll start on the E flat above the staff. I'll work my way up in whole steps, broken pattern. So when I say broken, 1 down and then 2 up, 1 down, 2 up, 1 down, 2 up, so that I'm still covering all of them, but I'm kind of doing it in a jagged manner. I just feel like the disjunctness works well because then you really have to be quite smooth. Okay, so if G is a struggle, I'll go back 1. I'll backtrack 1. I'll backtrack 1 more. Okay, so it was B, so back down to A. Back down to G. Clean that up a little bit. Alright, so for now, let's say I can get it from G, and I can't really get it from F. So on my sheet, I would draw it down to G, and then the next time I come back, like tomorrow or the next day, then I would work down to G and try to get F. And one of these days I'll get it. And then you add E flat, and then you add D flat, and then you add B, etc., etc. Let's go to minor thirds now. Now that's really cool because I went down to E flat on that one. So if by working on it here, the next time I go do whole steps, I'll probably be able to get that F to E flat connection. Now that sounds really different to me right now because my face is doing things differently, but that's okay. It's all going to get smoothed out. Alright, I'm starting to get a little tight. So, okay, great, it got down to C. So now I would do major thirds. What was that down to? E flat? Yeah. Alright, so I'd work that up, and then I would do, I guess I could do perfect fourths next. Wouldn't be E flat because then I got to switch over. That's why. Yeah, I'm not used to playing these notes. These notes are so new to me that I still sometimes accidentally play the A flat or play the C. because as the interval get complex and broken, I can't really hear the patterns because I'm not familiar with them, and I'm not used to playing these notes. That's how new they are to me. Anyone who played with me in undergraduate or grad work knows that range was the #1 thing I struggled with. I mean, I struggled to play G above a staff, and now that note was so difficult. I also struggled with just being able to smooth out the registers. That was something I couldn't do. So this has really provided quite a bit of benefit for me. That's just an example. I could keep playing, but let's face it, most of you have stopped watching at this point. This is how I approach range. I've worked on it with my students. It seems to be a very broad spectrum way to just provide the right kind of environmental constraint to let the embouchure figure out what it needs to figure out. But I'm covering the range of the instrument. I'm starting in the high register, I'm working up to it, and I'm keeping everything relaxed and beautiful as I can. I'm diversifying the articulation, articulated and slurred. That was obviously the slurred version. I'm not too militant about the quality control in terms of articulation. As long as the vibration stays, present, that's more important for me during this stuff. As I refine and refine and refine, obviously I want to make sure that the articulation is consistent, but not priority #1 right now, so that's okay. And again, working it fast and slow. So if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, whatever, try it out. Let me know what you think. I think you'll find that this kind of this can help you or your students, and love to hear comments, feedback. Please feel free to subscribe to my page if you are interested, and thanks for your support.